I think the big misconception that a lot of people have about producers is they think producers are people who just find financing for their films.
I immediately fell in love with the story and the script.
We were looking for an arresting image that could be well represented in like a little icon on your TV.
There's something about bad sound that just reads as cheap.
This was a case of bend over and lose your filmic virginity, but you'll get a movie made and your name will be on it.
Anytime there's like that amount of money, there's going to be lawsuits.
There's nothing more important than the safety and the health of everyone who's working on a production.
It was like a passion project. They said, we want your movie. It was a bidding war. It was a major bidding war.
You can't buy that kind of publicity.
Welcome to Producerville, the only podcast to interview movie producers in depth so that you can become a better producer. This week, we're speaking to Scott Schneid and Dennis Whitehead, and they produce the seminal classic, 1984's Silent Night, Deadly Night. Scott has since told me that there's a comma in between the Silent Night and the Deadly Night. Well, first thing I just want to tell everybody listening, it's really fun to hear them talking and having a conversation. You can tell the friendship they have had over the years, and they're just so funny and great guys. But here's the thing. I know this is Producerville, and we're talking to independent producers, but you're going to find out very quickly, they really didn't produce Silent Night, Deadly Night. And right. So we found out on the call that, you know, they didn't produce the movie and they were kind of pushed out of it. But we left the interview in the series anyway because it's a fascinating story and it's also a cautionary tale about what can happen as a producer, especially at a studio level. So anyway, we talk about everything else around the producing.
Yeah, and unlike some of the other producers featured on the podcast, Scott and Dennis had a lot of input on the script. And, you know, they talk about how they were really pushed aside from the studio. They talk about the amazing poster design, which is one of the most iconic slasher posters of all time. And they reveal who was originally supposed to direct Silent Night, Deadly Night, which might surprise you.
And one more thing before we go to the interview, everyone listening, the movie received tremendous backlash, so much so that the movie was banned in theaters. That doesn't happen to a lot of movies. So anyway, it's a really exciting interview. These guys are so much fun to listen to. So, all right, everybody, enjoy the interview with Scott Schneid and Dennis Whitehead talking about Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Fire away, guys. What would you like to know?
What was the very first seed that was planted for Silent Night, Deadly Night?
I don't know if Dennis told you guys this. We did not go up to Utah for the production. So we're only halfway producers, really, if you want.
Okay.
I mean, we developed the script, and Dennis, we can address that in a second. We know how that all went about, how that all came about. We developed the script from inception, from page one, and Dennis and I owned the screenplay, and Dennis and I hired Michael Hickey to write the screenplay. First, we hired him as to do a treatment. And then based on a 30-some-odd page treatment he worked on that he wrote, we then hired and raised money for him to write the feature script. But we were then frozen out of the production. And I guess we can get to that. So we did not go to Utah where the film was shot. Dennis, we were shot in, Heber, Utah, outside of Park City, I think, or something?
Yeah. Just outside of Salt Lake City. That's where it was shot.
And we weren't there.
No, we weren't there.
We were young guys, and we were frozen. This is an interesting story. We got a co-executive producer credit on the movie, and in most scenarios, executive producers are people that maybe put up money. Right. There's many credits on movies, from producer to executive producers to co-producers to associate producers. There's multiples of each on films often these days, especially in the independent world,
Oh, yeah.
Where they have to cobble a lot of different money sources together to make an independent film. And so you'll see so many producer credits, or executive producer credits, because everybody's putting up 10 cents wants a credit,
Right.
So Silent Night, Deadly Night was very different in those days because Dennis and I, we owned the script. We developed it from inception, like I said, from line one. But in this case, we didn't have the bank book to write a check to fund the film. So we were relying on other people to fund it. And Dennis knew Ira Barmack, the producer, and who ended up getting the producer credit. Dennis knew Ira, right?
Well,
Dennis?
yeah, he was an agent at the time at ICM, and my brother was an agent there. And that's actually how I met Scott, because I was friends with an agent trainee at ICM, Alan Greenspan, and he and Scott were on the respective agencies' baseball team. Scott was on the William Morris team, where he was an agent trainee, and Alan.
Okay.
So that's how we all met, and we became friends. And Ira Barmack, I had talked to, whenever I went up to visit my brother, which was pretty often. And I thought he was a really good guy, interesting guy, but turned out to be not so much. But that's down the road. We'll tell you all that, that juicy stuff.
So Silent Night, Deadly Night, really, the origins of it are in the swamp of the agency business.
Yeah.
Young agent trainees hustling in Hollywood. We were young guys in our, early to mid 20s, and that's how it all. I mean, we should probably say, Dennis, how it all began. And how it all began was, I was a trainee at William Morris in the agent training program, and working 12 hours a day like we did, and I had some interest in maybe producing and not being an agent ultimately. And I got a script because I was an undergraduate at Harvard back in my college days, and I was advising young students could look, like there's a whole networking thing going on, right?
Right.
So, whether it's Harvard or UCLA or wherever you go to college, if you were an undergraduate at Harvard and you were interested in the film business, you could go and look up alumni that had graduated from the university that were in the film industry. You could that had agreed to advise potential showbiz kids, about that were at Harvard, about their experiences and give them some tips and stuff. So I was contacted by a young guy, and this is interesting. I was contacted by a young guy named Paul Kamey while I was a trainee at William Morris, who was I think it was a senior at Harvard at the time. And he said, just a couple of years younger than I was at the time. And he said, listen, I've written a script, and this was like 1981. And he said, I've written a horror script set at Christmas called He Sees You When You're Sleeping.
Okay.
And he said, I did it for a class at Harvard, a seminar, and I'd love to send it to you, because, he figured, I'm working at William Morris, so I'm a conduit. Maybe he could get, his script, get it around for him, and if I liked it. And so he sent me the script. His name was Paul Kamey. He sent me the script, and I thought it was pretty terrible, but it was
I second that. It was really bad, but there was the kernel of a good idea there.
What was the story of that first script like compared to what Silent Night, Deadly Night became?
Totally.
And what was so bad about it?
Okay, so it was 70 some odd pages to start, which by the way could have been 70 some odd pages of brilliance, but it wasn't. It just was a knockoff. It was another knockoff. It was about a teenage girl in a small town and her friends, and there's a whack job running around on Christmas Eve, killing people in the small town, and she ends up confronting the evil killer Santa and saving the town and her friends. So by 1981, we had seen that template about 1,700 times already, in the R-rated slasher genre, whether it was Halloween or Friday the 13th, where the killer is a faceless, nameless person who you know nothing about, and then there's some flashback later on from another character who tells you who the killer really was. And we do, so that's what it was. And so Dennis and I were friends, and I said, Dennis, I got this script. Why don't you read it? I said, it's not very good, but there's the germ of an idea here for a potential slasher film set at Christmas, Dennis, I don't know if you knew this, but I didn't know at the time in 1981 that there had been a couple of indie horror films made set at Christmas.
No, I didn't either, because it really wasn't the genre of movies that I loved at the time. So no, I didn't.
Well, and the other reason you didn't know and I didn't know is because those Santa movies that had come prior to Silent Night, Deadly Night were indie horror films that were not released through major studio.
Right.
They were under the radar kind of things. You know, there was an episode of Tales from the Crypt, I think with Joan Collins or something in the 70s that had a wacko.
That's worth watching.
Yeah.
It had a wacko Santa character in it, like I don't know exactly the story, but there was in a house, and there was I never saw that.
she tried to kill her husband and make it look like this psycho Santa did it.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. I just know that there was an episode which involved the psycho Santa. So, and I know there were like 2 baby indie films made, again, that didn't get any kind of wide release, had no footprint, you know?
Right.
There were small little indie films that were made, and no one saw them in the theaters or there were no ad campaigns behind those prior psycho.
So you guys, so what basically you're saying, you guys saw an opportunity to create something bigger that had a footprint, like you say.
Yeah.
With another holiday horror slasher.
Well, yeah, and we really wanted to produce a horror film because we knew those make money. You know, that was the low budget genre, you know, that always made money.
Right.
If it was well done. I mean, and some of them that weren't well done made money, right? Yep. Anthony and Nate have probably seen every horror film under the sun, so they could educate us.
Close.
That cracker that I ate 5 minutes ago is coming back.
See, I told you.
There could be a slasher movie in this. I don't know. But excuse me.
Well, then how did you? All right. So did you option the script from Paul and then change it, or how did the traction start?
Yes, we did. We optioned the movie, and see, I'm morphing as we speak now into some kind of creature. My voice.
I hope we don't lose you tonight, Scott.
No, I'm fine. But my wife was right. Do not eat a cracker before you go up.
What possessed you?
You're all doomed, as they say.
Hold on.
I'm sitting here with a glass of water. Thank you very much.
I thought you had a glass of wine, Dan. Come on.
I was going to, but
yeah, that's what you said earlier. Yeah. So yes, guys, we Dennis and I Dennis read it after I gave it to him, and we both agreed there was nothing new here. It was old news. So but we loved the idea of a horror movie that had slasher elements set at Christmas time. We figured teenagers are the most irreverent creatures in the universe. What better thing than to take Santa, turn it on its head, 180 degrees, right? And turn it into something scary. Christmas, you know, blood on the snow, you know, is visual, right? You know, blood on the snow. Christmas is a visual holiday to begin with, you know, with all the colors and the lights and the music, Christmas music. And again, you know, we just thought it was just ripe for.
Yeah, and make the protagonist kind of a hot young guy, you know, dressed in a Santa Claus suit.
Right.
Or make the antagonist / protagonist what it's really turned out to be, right? Didn't it really?
Right.
Because Billy Chapman in the movie is the monster you love. I mean, you almost love it. You don't, what Dennis and I were saying, you almost want to apologize for him, you know, every time.
He's like a Frankenstein. Yeah.
Yeah, it was unique to me, even the first time I saw it, which I was 10 years old when I first saw it. And I even back then was like, realized that the killer is like the main character of the movie.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
And I was like, this is different.
Right.
And that's what what we knew was that we didn't want to screw Paul Camey over. So we did what you just said. We optioned his script for 6 months. And then we went about digging into our very shallow pockets because we didn't have a lot of money. And Dennis knew Michael Hickey. Well, you could tell him.
Yeah, Michael was working at Paramount, and I knew him there. And we were buddies, and I thought he was a pretty good writer. I'd read a couple things he did. He wrote a Edward R. Murrow play, which was really well done. And
perfect for Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Exactly. See, but he was really smart. He had a lot of gravitas, for a young guy. I mean, he really was a good writer.
Dan, The Shining was his favorite movie.
Oh yeah, he loves Kubrick. He's a huge Kubrick, Hitchcock, Truffaut fan. So that kind of tells you who he is.
Okay.
Yeah, and we hired him to write the treatment, and then my brother
to come up with a whole new take. To come up with a whole new take on the one sentence idea that Paul Kamey blessed us with, which was a psycho Santa. That's
right.
all. That is the only thing we took from Paul Kamey's script. A psycho.
That's interesting. So I have a question about. So we're keeping the focus on the producing, and this is great. So my question as a producer is, did you experience any kind of backlash from Paul? In other words, did you tell him that you were going to do that, or did he say, well, wait a second, I just wrote this script, why aren't you making my script? And was there any kind of, that's what I want to know just from a producing standpoint.
We said, fuck you, Paul. Thank you. Just be happy we're giving you 99 cents for your script. And bow down before us. No.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, we had a discussion with him. I mean, we were nice about it. We said, we really didn't think your script was the direction we wanted to go, but we liked the character, the main character. So
he knew we were developing a new. He knew that we were hiring another writer to develop a new script.
Okay,
but he was a young kid. He was like 23 years old. We were all of 26, I think.
Right. I like how he was a young kid, and so were you. And,
right, exactly. Yeah. But the thing is, we were already out in the world. You know what I mean? He was just about to graduate, and he didn't even want to be in the business. He went to law school, actually.
Right.
After. So he just he said, well, hey, run with it. Run with it. And just so you know that we in the option, he was going to get a based on a story idea by credit, not based on a story by credit, which he ended up with, which we'll tell you later was insane. It was based on a story idea by credit, which is not even a WGA credit. There's no such thing under the WGA as a story idea by credit. But this was not a WGA deal. Michael Hickey at the time was not a WGA writer. It wasn't the deal was not made under the auspices of the WGA. It was an indie deal, not covered by the WGA, the Writers Guild of America's basic minimum agreement. Which calls for all you would-be producers out there, which calls for certain residuals and things like that when a movie airs on television or cable, or a percentage of, at that time, DVD sales or VHS sales at that time, video cassette sales at the time, so that deal was not made under the WGA. And so Paul got, we had a 6 months option. Dennis and I dug out of our pockets. Paid Michael Hickey, I think it was like $500 to do a whole new take on a killer Santa film, and Michael went back and produced a 32-page treatment called well, I think the working title of the treatment was just Santa Claus, but ultimately it morphed into Sleigh Ride, right? SLAYRIDE, one word. That was the working title of the project, Sleigh Ride, which we love.
I still love that title. Yeah,
it's great. Yeah,
we love that.
Do either of you know where the rumor started? Like, there was a long time where there was not a lot of information about the making of this movie out there, and I can remember there was so much information online that was saying that the story was taken from a novel called Sleigh Ride, written by some author. That the novel didn't exist. The novel didn't even exist.
No, it never existed. What happened? So what happened is because Dennis and I got frozen out of the production the post-production, the release of the film, and we were the parents. So we were the parents that carried the baby for 9 months, right? Eight months and 29 days, basically.
It was heartbreaking work.
Then the baby was ripped. The baby was ripped away from us.
Wow.
And shot. By the way, and shot. Just so you know this, and we're not just saying this. And Michael Hickey will tell you this. The baby was shot 99% the way we handed the script over to Ira Barmak.
Okay.
99%.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. That's pretty rare.
So that's the origin of Silent Night, Deadly Night. The origin is Paul Kamey sending me his script that he wrote at Harvard, his 70 some odd page script, to me as a trainee at William Morris, and I got it to Dennis, and then Dennis knew Michael Hickey, and we hired Michael to do this treatment, and Michael delivered a fabulous treatment, a very detailed 30 some odd page treatment. And off of that very detailed 30 some odd page treatment, we then set about, because we had an option for Michael's services, right, Dennis, to do the script if we liked and could raise the money, right, from what I remember. Right. So we then had to raise, I don't know, 15, 20 grand or something to hire in 82 to hire Michael to then go to screenplay off of his very, very detailed, by the way, 30 some odd page treatment. And that's what we did. We were able to raise from 2 different investors because we didn't have the money, and we were lucky. We raised, I think, about 30 some odd $1,000. And, we gave Michael half it and we took the rest.
So what was the relationship like with Ira then? Was it like
we
why were you shut out of it?
We hadn't met Ira yet. So we hadn't met Ira yet. So Michael.
I had met Ira, but Scott.
Oh,
hadn't.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I hadn't met Ira yet. We were just working with Michael to turn that treatment into a screenplay. So Michael did a whole number of drafts. Correct, Dennis? Please, if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Probably half a dozen drafts, or whatever. 4 drafts, 3 drafts. Just some drafts were just maybe a couple of days of work, maybe one was a week worth of work, but he did a bunch of drafts over the next 6 months. Turned out just fantastic, for what it was. At least I don't know, we didn't have any illusions that it was Citizen Kane, or we're making a Francois Truffaut movie,
But we also, just to back up a second, we worked very closely with him on the script, and we went back and forth and haggled a lot, and Scott had a lot of really great points about how this should be changed and this should be changed, and we came up with the final script. Michael came up with the final script.
Yeah,
but
Michael did all the writing then.
Yeah, we had input.
Right.
Yeah.
We had a considerable amount of input, but and helped him in certain ways, develop some. Well, let me go back for 1 second. Michael wrote the entire screenplay. Words on a page. But we just had a lot of input, and ultimately, from a story standpoint, talking about character stuff, we knew Michael was really smart in the sense that he said, how do I get a guy in a Santa Claus suit with an axe running around on Christmas Eve killing people? So he worked backwards. He said, I've got a guy in a Santa suit running around on Christmas Eve killing people. How did that happen? How did that guy at 20 or 19 or 22 end up in that suit, killing people, going naughty and punish? And
sure.
That's how the story evolved. He worked backwards. So he said, okay, what about a 5-year-old boy with his parents going to see a wacko grandpa at a mental institution? The grandpa, when the parents leave the room, the grandpa freaks the kid out by telling him, you see Santa tonight, boy, you better run for your life. Have you been good or naughty? So that's how it evolved. The parents are murdered on the highway. The boy ends up in orphanage under the tutelage of a off-kilter mother superior. Played Lillian Chauvin. I thought she was great. And so what happens to him in the orphanage? And then what happens to him? Then he gets 18. So it was like in sections, right? That he worked backwards, and then he worked backwards, and then he worked from the all the way to the beginning of the movie, and then all the way to the end of the movie again, where he really started, because he knew he had a guy in a Santa Claus suit killing people on Christmas Eve. We knew that we wanted to give the horror audience the red meat that they so deserved, you know, which was the Santa killings in the last third of the movie, really, or, you know, from the halfway point in the toy store, let's say, to the end, where people are killed by various, you know, Christmas tree lights and reindeer antlers and a sled beheading, you know, sledding beheading, and, you know, and
all the fun stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So let me ask you then. So was the why and the like what happened? Was that all missing from the original version? And
what original version? Paul Kamey's script?
Paul Kamey's version, right? What was Paul's version? More of a random guy running
None of
around?
that. Yeah.
None of that. Paul's. Yes, Dennis said none of that. There was no. It was a random guy, a la Halloween or Friday the 13th. Except in Paul's version, it's a random guy in a Santa suit. You don't know anything about him, nothing. And there's no orphanage, there's no parents, there's no grandpa, there was nothing. It was a Halloween-like version of a Santa killer that you'd seen a million times before, and you didn't know anything about the killer, nothing. So we didn't use any. When I say this is not some sort of cover-up on Dennis's mind. And I'm not here to bash Paul Kamey. He was a lovely young guy at the time, who you know was his first screenplay or second screenplay he'd ever tried, and
he didn't even want to be a screenwriter, is what it came down to. You know, the none of it was fleshed out in the story. You know, the characters or anything. So anyway, Scott, sorry I butted in there.
No, please,
yeah,
please. Yeah, That's how Michael worked, and that's how the story for Silent Night, Dead Night / Sleigh Ride happened. Is Michael worked backwards, and by working backwards, the whole first 2/3 of the movie, many people might say it's backstory. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The little boy's parents being murdered on the road by the highway Santa killer, the robber. You know, the little boy growing up in an orphanage. The little boy now 18, getting a job in a toy store, 19. Many people would say, well, throw all that shit out. That's all backstory. Why do you need that? No, because what Dennis and Michael all realized was that was a really cool story. That was really interesting. We hadn't seen that before.
Interesting.
None of us were fans of slasher movies, really. I like sci-fi movies like The Thing and, you know, and monster movies, like, you know, but I wasn't really a huge fan of like violent slasher movies. I don't think, you know, I know Perry Botkin, who composed the score, had never seen a slasher movie in his life. Seriously, when he did the score. And Michael didn't like slasher movies. None of us. So we were all attracted to Michael's take. You know, unfortunately, Dennis was friends with Michael. It was great. It was awesome. And Michael was a good young writer, and his take was new for that genre, which was pretty played out at the time.
It sounds like you were looking for a more intelligent approach rather than the obvious approach. I mean, the poster would have probably looked the same, but the movie wouldn't have been as good.
By the way, one of the greatest posters of all time, if I may kick.
That's my favorite movie poster ever.
It's so great. Tell us about the poster.
Well, all I can tell you is that it was tough for Dennis and I because we were frozen out of the production by Ira Barmak. So, you know, Dan, once we made the deal with Ira had a deal at TriStar Pictures, was a new studio at the time. Ira, I guess, from his agent, he knew Gary.
Yeah, he had a good buddy, Sidney Pollack,
the director, and I think that's kind of how it happened at TriStar. And I think he knew Gary Hendler too. Maybe Sidney Pollack introduced him to Gary. Gary Hendler was the president of TriStar.
I think that's probably the case. Yeah,
and they gave Ira a 3-picture deal.
Right.
So Ira had a deal at TriStar to make a bunch of low-budget movies, and I think he wanted to do a Danny Kaye. He gave TriStar. Remember this? He gave them 2 scripts. He gave them a Danny Kaye comedy and Sleigh Ride.
I know. Jeez, can you imagine?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And they were looking for their slasher franchise. Paramount had Friday the 13th, Universal had Halloween, And TriStar said, ours will be Sleigh Ride.
And what possessed TriStar to pick up that movie with all the Coca-Cola involvement with the company, you know?
Right.
It's
I mean, they were
really
owned
kind of,
I'm sorry, Dan.
maybe not. In retrospect, I find it amazing, but anyway.
Well, then TriStar was owned by Coca-Cola, Columbia,
And
Coca-Cola, CBS, and Home Box Office.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're owned by, they had corporate parents, you know, and you know, every Christmas there'd be big billboards showing Santa with Coca-Cola bottles in his hand. The Santa Claus became a iconic Coca-Cola holiday season ad, you know,
Right.
Sell Coca-Cola. So I remember when I was in New York when the movie opened in November of '84 in Manhattan, I saw, and there was a big billboard like in Times Square of like Santa Claus, you know, that kind of 50s style Santa with the big ruddy, you know,
Right,
puffed-up
exactly.
boots, you know, selling Coca-Cola with bottles of Coca-Cola in his hand. And around the corner, there's a big billboard for Silent Night, Deadly Night. Right?
Do you have any pictures from that time? You must have taken pictures.
No, I didn't actually. I don't know. Dan, did you see the movie in the because never? Did you see the movie in the theaters at all?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. I saw it in Boston and I saw it in New York, but in Brooklyn, I saw it in Brooklyn and Manhattan and in Boston. But we should go back because it's interesting. So we had this wonderful script that Michael Hickey did, and you know, I said this in
Get that cracker out of your mouth.
No, I just little tiny bites because I'm really hungry. You fuckers had to do this at dinner time.
So you should have eaten before.
I know, but I can't. I'm not like a blue hair, Dennis. I can't. I'm not. You know, I can't really. But so really, at the end of the day, and my favorite movie last year was The Joker. Okay, I love The Joker.
Great movie.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I think it's a brilliant movie, and brilliantly on every level. But when you think about it, Silent Night, Deadly Night's not that much different. Yes, The Joker's a $100 million movie, and I get all that. But the Joker's an origin story of how someone ends up becoming so damaged step by step by step.
Yeah.
That they end up becoming the Joker. How this human being, the Joaquin Phoenix character, who's just a person in the beginning of the movie, who's very damaged, and it becomes more and more and more damaged to the point where he snaps and he becomes this cartoon monster, right, called the Joker. So why is Silent Night, Deadly Night any different? It's an origin story of how a kid from his 5 years old slowly becomes more and more damaged and ends up psychotic.
It's interesting because in the movie he snaps because he's forced to wear this Santa outfit and something in him snaps. So it's different than someone who might be inherently evil, like a Jeffrey Dahmer or someone who has a brain that's wired that way. This is a guy who literally snaps and then goes on this rampage. So I think he was. I agree with you. I mean, you guys created this. I'm just agreeing and saying I think it was a genius approach because you're right. Even by 1981, Halloween came out in '78. Even in that 3 years, it started to get tired. And that was the beginning of the 80s. And the slasher genre went through the late 80s and mid 90s maybe. But I think it's very smart for you to do that. I really do.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, Michael did an awesome job. We had a great script, and then we had to go find money to get it made. Right. And, you know, Dennis to the rescue once again. You know, he knew Ira Barmack. God bless him. You know, he knew not Ira Barmack, but God bless Dennis for at least opening that door to money. and you know.
Well, yeah. I mean, do you want us to give you a little backstory on Ira?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was an interesting guy. I mean, aside from being an agent at the time at ICM, before that, he was a medical doctor, you know, born and raised in New York City. He was a gynecologist. I mean, go figure. that's bizarre in itself.
He was a gay gynecologist. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah.
Which is kind of more wild when you think about it.
I saw an interview with him before, like obviously an old video, and he reminded me of Lloyd Kaufman from Troma Films. Like that's who I thought of when I saw him.
Well, even before he was a doctor, he was an actor, and knew a lot of I in the business. I mean,
Dennis, I think he'd been the president of Filmways Television, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I met Michael Douglas through him. Ira said, "Oh yeah, he's looking for a development person," and I got to meet Michael Douglas. We had a nice meeting, the three of us, and I mean, he needed somebody with a lot more experience, but he was starting a television production company of his own. So, but yeah, Ira was a good guy up until he wasn't.
So what Dennis means by that is that we were looking for money to get the film made, and we had met with a couple of different people. ICM, because Dennis had a connection to ICM through his brother. And listen, those kinds of connections are always great if you have them. The business for would-be producers, obviously, if you can't write the check to get your first movie made, you can't actually write a check to fund something for $250,000, $500,000, $2 million, whatever. It's all about networking, right?
Right.
Excuse me. Crackers are coming back.
Still eating those crackers, huh?
I hope you leave this in, because I think it's pretty funny.
I'm so stupid.
Can I just ask you what kind of crackers they are? Because I would never eat them again.
They're the worst crackers you could possibly eat to do this. They're like multi-seeded crackers.
Oh, God.
They're just like full of little tiny seeds that will get stuck in your throat. So the thing about Ira though was that, and Dennis was great, was that Dennis had those connections, and prior to getting into Ira, we were using ICM because the script was really good, and the agents at ICM, and a couple of agents had read at ICM, and Michael Hickey's agent was at ICM, and they represented some young directors at the time that were very promising and really visual. So the gentleman that directed Purple Rain, Albert Magnoli, wanted to direct Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Okay. Wow.
If you can believe that.
Wow.
So
would have been a much different movie.
He was a young ICM client. And Dennis, there was also, what was the name of the other fellow that went to direct? He directed a whole bunch of episodes of The Office. Ken Kwapis.
Right.
Ken Kwapis was a very talented young guy. He directed some features. You'll laugh because they're not horror movies, but he directed like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. He directed he just directed a movie with Nick Nolte and Robert Redford like 2-3 years ago called A Walk in the Woods.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
He directed all. He loved silent. So Kwapis and Albert Magnoli, and then Stuart Margolin played Angel on the Rockford Files. He just directed an acclaimed HBO movie called The Glitter Dome, a cop story based on the Joseph Wambaugh novel. Joseph Wambaugh was an ex-cop who ended up becoming a writer and wrote a bunch of very successful novels. And Stuart Margolin, so we had Stuart Margolin wanted to direct it. Albert Magnoli wanted to direct Purple Rain the next year, wanted to direct it. Ken Kwapis, wanted to direct so nominated for all these Emmys in television and directed a whole bunch of features, wanted to direct it. And so we were looking for, partners. We were looking to try and get momentum, right? To get the thing off the ground somehow and attract money, attract money. And Dennis, then you gave it to the man himself. Marmack.
Yeah.
So it was a double-edged sword. So Ira had to go to TriStar to make a movie, to make a couple of low-budget movies. And TriStar said, we'll forget Danny Kaye. We'll do Silent Night, Deadly Night. We'll do Sleigh Ride. And they ended up changing the title, TriStar did. And then the minute we started negotiating with Ira, who had been so Dennis was friends with him, obviously, up to that point. And
I wasn't close friends with him, but, I was friendly. I wasn't a social friend with him, but, we had a nice rapport, whenever I saw him. But anyway, that's
So yeah, we went up to his house in Beverly Hills. He was so nice to us, and he said, I want to take you guys. I'd like to shoot the movie in Utah because it's a right to work state, which means you can get around the union issue, if you're trying to make a low budget movie. And he said, I'd love to bring you guys up there. I'd like to teach you, because we got our mid-20s, He said, I want to help, help you, show you, teach you, and, have your attorney, start negotiating the deal for me to acquire the rights and for your producing deal. And then I never ever talked to him again or saw him ever.
Oh,
again.
wow. That's interesting. So he was just like schmoozing you to kind of get something, and then that was it. Yeah. Very well. It doesn't surprise me, but
so this was a case of bend over, take it up to shoot, and lose your filmic virginity, but you'll get a movie made, and your name will be on it, and you'll get some. That's what happened, and so we ended up being. We had a young lawyer at the time that I actually knew through my William Morris endeavors, and his name was Craig Jacobson, and he's now a huge lawyer in Hollywood. He's
good guy, really nice guy.
Ryan Seacrest lawyer. He's a big attorney now, big, and he was our attorney. So we had a good young Hollywood entertainment attorney representing us, but Barmack he negotiated to the point where it was like, take this or leave it, take this or leave it, take this or leave it. So what were we going to do? We're young guys, get our first movie made, Like
Sometimes
I said,
you have to walk away, but, this was our first big deal. So, it was hard to walk away and take the chance that we might get it made somewhere else. We might not. So
would you agree that it's good advice to say to somebody, it's better to have a small piece of something big than a big piece of nothing? Is that kind of like, is that is that kind of how you looked at it?
Yeah, I think to an extent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, how I looked at it is I wanted to stop bartending at night.
Yeah, right.
I was a trainee at William Morris for 2 years and a couple of months, and then I left. And we were developing Silent Night Daily Night during the time I left, and I was working as a bartender at night, and doing creative stuff during the daytime, which Silent Night Daily Night was one of the things I was doing. And I wanted to make some money. I wanted to get some money and stop bartending, I could devote more time to being creative. So but we got fucked. I mean, in the sense that we got. So we were bounced to executive producer credit as opposed to producers. Okay, we're bounced to executive producers, and we got some money, but not a lot of money. The movie was made for $1,065,000. It was a negative pickup at TriStar, and so TriStar basically funded the movie.
Right.
And we only had net profits in sequels and remakes.
Interesting.
And just so you know, we never saw a dime.
Wow.
So 4 made-to-video sequels were made, and they were all just, I'm
garbage.
You mean you didn't like Part 5, The Toy Maker?
No. Well, you know the famous story about Part 5 and Mickey Rooney, don't you?
Yes.
We're familiar, but please tell us.
Well, the famous quote was Mickey Rooney said this after Silent Night, Deadly Night came out, our movie. He said, "The scum that made this movie should be run out of town." And then, like 5 years later, 6 years later, 7 years later, whatever, he stars in Silent Night, Deadly Night, Part 5.
God, the irony of it all.
Right?
Yeah.
But we never saw a dime from 2, 3, 4, or 5. And we had a chunk of Ira Barmack's net profits. And believe me, he made hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s in net profits.
Which is crazy because, quite famously, Part 2 is like 75% the original movie.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I know. Yeah. It's insane. It's total. I mean, Dennis, were you with me when we saw Part 2 at the Egyptian in the back in the porno bunker? I used to call it.
No, I didn't go.
No. Oh, I went to see Part 2. It was released in like 15 theaters in the United States. And it was released on Hollywood Boulevard at the time, in '86, the Egyptian Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, which is now the American Cinematheque,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
They had 2 little theaters in the back. They used to show B movies. I used to call them the porno bunkers.
Wait a minute, are those theaters still there?
They are.
I think they're still there. That's a good question.
I've been to the Egyptian 1,000 times.
Well,
I never knew that.
Maybe they're not there. I don't know. I've been to the main theater a bunch of times, but
right.
I'm not
sure. If they're there, they're not in use because we've been there fairly recently.
Yeah, we were there recently. So those movies came, and Dennis and I watched from the sidelines as the publicity circus for our movie when it was released happened, and Barmack just froze us out contractually. We had no like round trip transportation or per diem or hotel in Utah where the movie was shot. That wasn't part of our deal.
We weren't even invited, and I'm sure this was because of Ira, of course. We weren't even invited to the screening at TriStar.
Yeah, we were not invited to the cast and crew.
Wow.
Yeah. That usually happens when you did something to piss them off, or but it sounds like they were like, thank you very much, and they will take it from here. That's
It was a rude slap in the face for sure.
Wow. Oh my
we even sent a letter to Gary Hendler, the president of TriStar, after we found out that there had been a cast and crew screening and we weren't invited. And I'll go nameless, but one of the executive vice presidents of the company, vice president of production, called us, and he was a complete dick on the phone to us. And he just said, I just said, how could this happen? We developed the script from inception that you guys shot it 99% the way we delivered it to Ira Barmack. He said, I'm not interested and I don't care. That's what he said to me like 3 times on the phone call.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible. It was a horrible, kind of, I don't know what to say.
What would have been the harm to have you guys there?
It was an abortion.
Well, of course, yeah. I some deep-rooted insecurity within Ira. I have no idea what it was, but he didn't want 2 young guys involved. He wanted to run the show, I guess.
He wanted people to know that we were the guys that developed the script 99% the way he made the movie and shot it. Yeah. He wanted complete credit.
Wow.
And so what a fucking egomaniac was he, and all that, I want to help you and show you how to produce. You'll come to Utah. It was all bullshit. It was like a total schmooze. That was all bullshit, because once the negotiation started for us to turn over the copyright to him and his company, even though we turned it over to him, of course, we would be attached as executive producers. We would get a small fee. We would get credit in the main titles and on the posters and all that stuff, And this was the day before 20 producers per movie. You know what I mean? So there's only like 3 producing credits on the great horror poster of all time, which is Barmack and myself and Dennis. We were the only producers. That was it.
Right.
That was it. So
wow.
So yeah, and when I remember when the movie was about to come out, and the TriStar, I don't even know why they did this. They FedExed both of us copies of 10 copies each of the poster, and I didn't know what the design was or anything because we were completely frozen out. We had no idea what was going on.
Right. So you get the posters in the mail. Is that when you found out about the title change?
I believe the title change was earlier. I don't know what date that would have been, but it was before the movie, before they did all the press stuff and all of that. I believe, yeah. But
you know why they changed it? Do you know? Was it because they wanted to make it more immediately identifiable? To yes, this is a Christmas horror movie. Sleigh Ride, you could probably figure that out, especially with the graphic on the poster. But do you know why they changed it?
Yeah, I'm sure that had something to do with it.
There was another project that was not a Christmas-oriented horror film that had registered the title Sleigh Ride, one word, with the Motion Picture Association Title Registration Service, which I think gave them first dibs on the title, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but that definitely happened. Whether that would have precluded TriStar using the title or not, I'm not really sure. It could also just have been something as simple. The marketing people at TriStar sat around and said, this is a pretty good title, but Silent Night, Deadly Night is better. You know what I'm saying? It might have just been as simple as that.
Probably what happened.
And so we just don't know the answer. Related to your question, my response to that would be, certainly in the days of the big box videos, VHS days, when you'd troll the aisles of the Blockbusters and the Hollywood video stores, cool title and cool artwork, you know, would really translate to those big VHS boxes, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, you would pick up and rent movies just because of the stinking artwork, especially if you're a horror fan, you know? You know, if there was cool artwork on the VHS box, or of course it got progressively smaller, then it went to DVD, and now it's streaming, you know, or it's all like, you know, there's no picking up the video box in your hand at the Blockbuster and looking at that. Like when Silent Night, Deadly Night came onto video in 86 or 5 through IVE/Live Home Video, there was the big box VHS.
Absolutely. I totally remember I worked in a video store when I was in college, and it was like the horror section was amazing because horror artwork in the horror genre is huge. And you're absolutely right when you say, especially in the horror genre.
I remember it in the video store as a kid because of the big box. It was like so awkward. It didn't quite fit on the shelf with the other horror movies. And I vividly remember like looking at the back of it and being like, because if you remember, there's no, like the artwork on the front is so striking, but when you look at the back, it's just words. There's no pictures. And I was like, it's so bad. They can't even put any pictures from it on the
back. That's really funny, man. Well, so I think, you know, maybe today, I mean, look, it's always great. You know, it was called high concept in Hollywood. You know, if you have a story idea that you can, like, in one sentence, you know, you can convey the hook if it's got a really good hook, you know, like a Psycho Santa on the loose on Christmas Eve, you know. That's what Silent Night, Deadly Night was really about. Psycho Santa on the loose on Christmas Eve, killing people, you know.
Yeah.
You know? So if you can convey that in a really cool poster, today with all the streaming, I mean, I don't think people focus so much on that like they did back in the day, you know?
Yeah.
Tell me I'm wrong and I'm just an old fart who's out of touch.
No, I would say you're absolutely right. And I think the Weinsteins had a lot to do with that because a lot of their movie posters for like Scream and Halloween H2O and like I Know What You Did Last Summer, it was just pictures of the actors' faces. They just wanted to tell their audiences, you know, who's in the
floating
movie.
Head posters they called them.
And today it's
true.
It's like that today, you know, with the Goosebumps movies, and they just put the Stranger Things posters. They just put the floating heads, you know.
Yeah,
it's all the same thing again and again and again, you know. So I don't know, you know, but so yeah, I think listen, it's always good to have a high concept idea that has a great commercial hook in that one line sentence, you know. And if you could translate that into a visual, you know, because films are visual, obviously. That's even better, and they did it brilliantly with Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Yeah.
Bert Klieger, by the way, was the artist. Bert Klieger, Kleeger, who was hired, you know, TriStar's outside marketing people, I think. Well, I think he was at an advertising agency in New York.
Is it a photograph or is it a painting?
It's a photograph.
Oh, it is. Okay, great. That's what I thought. Okay.
There were
So he actually set up the set and took pictures and
yeah.
Do you know if there's any? They didn't never take one picture. Did they take like hundreds of pictures of different scenes and stuff like that?
A few years ago, I talked to Bert, and he had done some alternate. He did an alternate poster that
I've seen that. It looks so good too.
Yeah, well, it was Santa out front of a woman coming to the front door, right? Shot from behind Santa Claus in front of her door, and she's opening the door, and he's got a bloody axe in his hand. She's like, ah! Not nearly as good though as for me as the roof, the chimney. And you know, the tagline was great. I mean, you've made it through Halloween, now try and survive Christmas. You know?
Perfect 1980s advertising.
And it said and then the second tagline on the poster was, "He knows when you've been naughty," which is great.
Right. Yeah. The one thing that we haven't discussed yet that I want to bring up is the famous or infamous controversy surrounding the release of the movie, where, you know, you had mothers in the streets literally with picket signs and their children protesting, and TriStar was going to pull the pictures and destroy the prints and all this crazy stuff. Did you guys like catch any sort of like backlash from that when that was happening?
No, we were asked to go on the Donahue show, but Ira Barmek did that show. We didn't really want any part of that.
Well, Phil Donahue was a talk show. He was married to Marla Thomas, Danny Thomas'
Yes.
daughter.
Yeah.
He was a very popular afternoon talk show guy, and he did a whole to show you how crazy the reactions were to this movie. Today would barely get a sneeze or a cough. I think in the public.
And you can't buy that kind of publicity.
It must have helped the picture because the moment you tell half of America not to do something, they want to do it. So did you find that to be the case? Suddenly everybody was buzzing about it, and
they were buzzing until it was pulled from the theaters.
Well, Phil Donahue did an entire hour on the movie. Yeah. And we both got called. I mean, I was in Boston on vacation with my girlfriend at the time. I got a message from one of the casting people at the Phil Donahue show saying, look, we're going to do an episode on your movie. Would you like to come and be part of the show? And I said to my girlfriend at the time, I said, oh my God, they're going to roast me if I go there, I said. And, because there was a group out of Milwaukee called Mothers Against Movie Madness. So
right. Okay, I was trying to remember the name of that group. Yeah.
Right. So there was a bunch of housewives in the Midwest because the movie only opened in 398 theaters, okay? Which, TriStar was going to go wide 2 weeks later. Wide in those days meant like 1,200-1,300 screens. Now it's like 3,000, 4,000, right?
Right.
The movie goes wide. Now it's back in those days it was about 1,200 screens. So they were going to open it. They started in the northeast, in New York and Boston and all that area, New Jersey, and they were going to go and in the Midwest, in Chicago, they opened it in Detroit. And they were going to go wide like 2 weeks later. And when it opened in the Midwest, TriStar ran ads. They ran trailers for the movie during the Green Bay Packers football game when all the families in Wisconsin are sitting around the TV. And all of a sudden, you see a Santa Claus gloved hand grabbing an axe off a wall, which was in the toy store. And the announcer's going, he knows when you've been naughty, right? And then you see people screaming and gunshots, and parents are watching this.
They probably lost their minds watching this, going, what the hell is on TV? They probably lost their minds, yeah.
Who was president? Dan, who was president in '84? I don't even remember anymore.
Ronald
Reagan? President Carter.
Yeah, Reagan had just come in, I think.
So it was a much more conservative time, and the parents had just had it with all the slasher movies. And Silent Night Deadly Night came at the end of the slasher, phase, and this was the straw that broke the camel's back. So these mothers formed some kind of grassroots organization, and they were picketing theaters with bringing their 5-year-old kids in front of the movie theaters in Milwaukee and Chicago and New York, holding signs saying, Santa ain't no hitman. Little 5-year-old kids holding signs. Deck the hall with holly, not bodies.
That is crazy. I mean, it's just so, like, if you look at what's on TV now, you compare it to what's on TV, like the movies they make now. I mean, it's mild, it's compared to what is on.
I was in Boston, seeing it in Boston, and it was a sold out crowd. It was an afternoon show, and there was an African American woman that behind me. My personal favorite scene in the movie is when Santa, after he impales Linnea Quigley, whatever, on the reindeer antlers, and he's walking
on the antlers.
Yeah, and her little sister comes up and goes, Santa, he's leaving the house, he goes, you bring me a present? And he goes, have you been good? Have you been? And we see he's got his hand on the bloody box cutter that he wants to kill the little girl with. And, he goes, are you sure? And she goes, yes, Santa. He's dying to, like, offer, It's my favorite scene in the movie because he ends up giving her the box cutter, the bloody, as a present before he leaves the house. He bends down on one knee and hands her the bloody box cutter because she says, no, I've been good. So there's her birthday, and there's her Christmas present. And he leaves, and she looks at the box cutter with a quizzical look on her face, Like, what the fuck?
It's a great scene. I mean, it's a great scene. I can see why parents.
With the grandpa.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I love the grandpa. He's awesome.
Parents
Yeah, he and Mother Superior are my favorite characters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're awesome. But parents went crazy, and they had a cause. You know, it was a conservative backlash time in the country. Reagan was in the White House. Now all the mothers of America had a cause, so they went out and picketed and protested. That's why Donahue did his hour on the show. And the mothers were on the show. The mothers that formed this organization were on the Donahue show. And Barmack went on the show. And Dennis and I didn't go. And in retrospect, actually, I wish I had, actually.
Yeah, I think
interesting.
I feel the same way, yeah.
Yeah, I really wish I had.
Do either of you have a copy of that hour? Did you have either of you tape it?
No, I don't. And, you know, there's a guy writing a book now for McFarlane Press on Christmas horror, and a whole chapter is going to be devoted to Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Oh, nice!
And he tried to get the show, and they only have tapes up to 82.
Oh,
so
God!
They don't have. I forgot to tell you that, Dennis. That last week.
Shoot.
So
somebody somewhere probably has a copy.
Someone has it for sure.
You guys will love this though. So I'm in Boston with my girlfriend at the time. It's a daytime show in Boston, sold out, man. An African, when in that scene, I just, you know, went over with the little girl and Santa giving her the bloody box cutter as a gift because she's been good. A black woman behind me stands up in the theater and screams, "If Santa kills that little girl, honey, I am leaving." I don't mean to sound, but that's exactly the way she sounded. That's exactly what she said. "I am leaving." She said, "If Santa kills that little girl," she literally bolted up in her seat, you know. So people were crazy. It was crazy, you know. It was madness, you know. It was total madness, and it was just a conservative backlash at the time, and a backlash that parents it was the slasher straw that broke the camel's back. Wouldn't you say that, Dennis?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's what it was, man. And we were, I don't know about you, Dan, but I was shocked. I never for 1 second, I don't think Dennis did either, ever thought. We thought we were developing an R-rated movie for teenagers.
Yeah.
That's what we thought.
Well, you know, the sad thing is the movie was on its way to making, you know,
20 million.
Yeah.
20 million domestic.
Why did TriStar agree to pull it? I mean, why wouldn't they just ride this? I mean, it's marketing, and
it was their parent, their
Coca-Cola.
their parent companies, and Coca-Cola, I'm sure, had really, you know, that would be an interesting story in itself.
Yeah, I'm sorry, dude.
Yeah, what happened with Coca-Cola and TriStar? Because, you know, the reason Santa Claus is so commercial in the United States is because of Coca-Cola and its advertisements starting in, you know, the late 1800s, turn of the century.
So, you know, you had this craziness, and TriStar being in its first year of operation, they didn't want all this negative publicity, and they had all these corporate taskmasters that were, you know, funding them, with Coca-Cola being the central one and being a very middle American kind of company, you know, saying we want, my understanding is that Coca-Cola said we want this movie out of the theaters. Is that, I'm not really sure. That's what I kind of gathered happened from.
I think that's probably the case. Yeah.
You know, and they pulled it, and in only 10 days of showing, the ads for the movie, by the way, were pulled off of network TV days before the movie opened. The ads were. So the movie opened with no television advertising on only 398 screens. It grossed, I think, was like, I don't know, $4 million in the first 10 days. And it was on its way to grossing when they went wide. They were going to go wide, as I said, 2 weeks later to 1,200 screens. It would have done $18, $20 million on a $1 million negative. That's 20 times the cost. It would have grossed. And that's just in the U.S. and Canada. That's not Europe, you know, the rest of the world.
Did you guys each have a moment that you can remember where you kind of realized that this has like a cult following and, you know, it was not just forgotten?
I think for me, it was at the at the American Cinematheque. Was that when we did the album?
Yeah, 14. But
yeah,
mine predates that. But you tell yours. That's for you. Yeah.
No. I just realized, seeing all these fans and how much the movie meant to them, and hearing them talk about it, and that was kind of it for me. I mean,
well, and for me in 2006, remember the studios were remaking all the slashers from the 80s back then,
right?
Yeah.
I was driving by Quentin Tarantino's New Beverly Cinema in Hollywood, and they were showing because Quentin has his own print of the film, right? He has his own 35 millimeter print of Silent Night, Deadly Night. Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez are big fans of Silent Night, Deadly Night. They actually at the Austin Film Festival years ago, they reenacted the grandpa scene with Little Billy. One of them played grandpa, and one of them played Billy. It used to be up on Google. You could Google it, but it's been taken down. And they knew every line of dialogue from the scene, the two of them. And they reenacted the scene it was either South by Southwest or what's the other thing? Something fest for horror movies in Austin every year they have. I forget what it's called, but they enact it, yeah. But so I was driving by Quentin Tarantino's theater in 2006, and I didn't even know they were screening the movie. I didn't even know he had his own print. I look, and there's like 300 people lined up to get in to see the movie. And I really couldn't believe it. And since then, now in the last 5 years or so, every year Quentin shows Silent Night, Deadly Night with the original Black Christmas as a double feature.
Right.
And Dennis and I have gone to the theater and done Q&As with the sold out audience every year. There's 220 crazy horror fans show up for Silent Night, Deadly Night, and Black Christmas, and the original Black Christmas. And we go and we do like a Q&A with the people in the audience. But Brian Quinn turned to me and said, "Hey, Scott," he said, "Hey, man," he said, "don't knock it." He said, "Look, it's 35 years later. People are coming out to see your movie in the dark. They're having a blast," he said. "They're really enjoying it, and they come back every year." He said, "How many people come back to watch Kramer versus Kramer?"
True.
It's very true.
Meryl Streep that won all these Academy Awards, right? So Dustin Hoffman, Meryl Streep, it won like multiple. He said, "How many people are out here watching Kramer versus Kramer every year?" He said, "Nobody."
Yeah, it kind of makes up for all the bad stuff that happened, at the inception of the film. So yeah, I mean, I'm really gratified that all these fans are out there that love it.
Yeah, so. It's awesome. Yeah. It's awesome. And and the other thing for Dennis and I, which is so great, is we've outlived Ira Barmack by 27 years. And now
I love that. Yeah.
And now, as you guys know, the rights to the film, Dennis and I now own the movie. But just to be able to talk about this with you guys, kind of 35 years later, warms my slasher heart.
I bet.
I mean, no, it does, because honestly, it's like Dennis and I have been friends since 1980. I mean, literally 40 freaking years. And there was a time we lost a little bit of touch with each other. I went on to a screenwriting career with another writing partner, because Dennis and I didn't write together, But it's just great that, so we've been brought back together as friends, and as a result of, and we always got along great. We always liked and respected each other. And we're obviously different kind of guys, as you can tell just from this interview, but, different people, but always got along great and complimented each other, I thought, when we did what we did all those years ago. And, so it's been fun for us to through the film and now getting the rights back.
Thank you so much for talking to us. I mean, seriously, your story is unusual and valuable. And Nate and I just want to say thank you for sharing the story of Silent Night, Deadly Night with us.
Yes,
well, it's been great talking with you too. And we really appreciate you asking us. And we hope that we've shed some insight into what it takes to get a little movie made.
I hope, following up what Dennis just said, thank you guys very, very much. It's been awesome to meet you. And I hope we've turned off a lot of people about becoming film producers. It's a long and winding road, as Dennis said.
It is. It's a horror story in itself.
Strewn with jagged glass and, spiky metal bits, but
Absolutely.
You only live once, and fuck it. If it's what you think you were put here to do, go for it.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you guys. Thank you
Take
so
You
much.
guys are the best. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Oh my gosh! So the funniest thing about that interview was Scott eating the crackers, and then telling us that his wife yelled at him about, why are you eating crackers during an interview?
Right. Yeah, I think at some point I said, what's the brand on those crackers? Like, because I will never buy them. Because obviously I will die. But such nice guys, and it must have been, like we said on the call, like so surreal for them to see the life that the movie has had all these years later, and when they went to Quentin Tarantino's theater and saw the line of all those people at midnight lining up to watch the movie. Just so cool.
Yeah, I was so fascinated by the idea of having a full developed script in front of you and just saying, we love literally one part of it, and we're throwing everything else out.
Yeah, and that takes a producer to see that. It's,
right.
It's like, well, listen, the way it's executed is not really working, but this core idea is really good. It's one more piece to the puzzle of your producing knowledge. So hope you got something out of this. Next week, we're going to be talking to Lottie Ferris-Knowles, who produced the movie Chastity Bites. She's a really good friend of mine, and I knew her before she made the movie, during and after she made the movie, and it's a fascinating story. She gives you a ton of information, and Lottie is so much fun to talk with. So, all right, everybody, thanks for listening to Producerville, and tune in next week to hear Lottie Ferris-Knowles talk about Chastity Bites. Good night.